All right, this is going to be a shorter one of my Paiste series, one of my Paiste video series. I think this might be number 4. But Bob was good enough to bring this over. My friend Bob, God love him. This is a 24-inch reissue. The original Giant Beats didn't have Paiste stamped on them on the underside. But this is a reissue, 24. Giant Beat. Remember, the original Giant Beat logo back in the day was on this side, and the embossed stamp was here, which I actually have an original. But you'll notice, what do you notice about this Giant Beat, this 24? It actually says Ride here. Now, my friend Bob got this from a dealer. Supposedly there were just a few made. I don't know if it was an Endorsee symbol or, you know, because the Giant Beats say the 24s you buy don't say Ride. Remember, they're multi-purpose, sort of all crash ridey type things, as the originals were. Although in a Ludwig catalog, I seem to remember that the 18s, it said 18 crash, like written, as written in the text in the catalog. The 24, I think, did say Ride, although the symbols themselves just said Giant Beat. White ink here, embossed stamp here. Of course, the later Giant Beats, as I've said in other videos, have Giant Beat here, like this, in sort of this old Western writing. I think it might have been a little bigger on the originals. I can't remember. But of course, remember the embossed stamp on the Giant Beats was always at the 3 o'clock position. And it looked a lot like the Formula 602 stamp, except it just didn't say Giant Beat. It just said Paiste, made in Switzerland, and then the moon and the rays. And what's interesting, you know, it was like the only Paiste line that didn't have, except for I think the original stuff, the original nickel silver stuff from the 50s and 60s, that just didn't have, like the 2002 embossed stamp and the 505 and the 404 and the 602. It all said the name of the symbol line in the stamp. The Giant Beat didn't. And I know there was, I think I said in another video, there was a 24 I saw at a music store 20 years ago that had the stamp here, and I didn't know what line it was. I ended up not buying it. It was a good sounding symbol. I didn't have the money, but if I'd known it was a Giant Beat, I would have bought it. Anyway, so this is a reissue, and I believe this is a little heavier than the standard Maltese. Hence the Ride here. You can see to differentiate. I think that it's heavier. Now, to me, this would be my favorite symbol. My friend Bob is selling this. I don't know if I'm going to buy it from him, but I do. As an aside, I've said in other videos, I've always, you know, over the past 20 years, unsolicitedly offered my opinions to Paiste by calling them all the time. Of course, they know me as probably like the psycho guy. But I do think, as far as it pertains with the Giant Beats now, they should have a slightly thinner version, a slightly heavier version. When the Giant Beats first came out, the reissues, whatever, 6 years ago, I was fortunate enough to see them at the Chicago show. They brought a set there, which I called it my friend Bob, and I told him. He came out and he bought the whole set except the 14s, of which I have the 15s here of that set. But I think that I was really impressed. Again, I said in the other videos that, you know, the darkness of the symbols, you know, they're thinner. You know, great symbols all around, but also I was really impressed. I wrote on a lot of the chat rooms that I wrote on at the time, or the forums like DFO at the time, or the Harry Kanganese, what was it, the DCI, and the Cymbal Hall, that they were great sounding symbols for rock, but especially for jazz, very dark. Anyway, I think that would behoove Paiste to make, you know, if they had like a Type 1 and a Type 2, or a medium thin and a medium heavy. I would consider the ones they make today to be medium thin, and then medium heavy. Wouldn't be a lot heavier, but a little heavier, you know, because the reissue Giant Beats are not all that heavy. And as I said in another video, you know, the original Giant Beats in the late 60s, early 70s, they had quite a weight differentiation. You know, they weren't, people talk about Paiste's consistency. Original Giant Beats, I don't have the facts and figures in front of me. I should have written all this stuff down. But my friend Bob, there were times that, you know, we even had in my possession at one time too, and he's told me, you'll have like an 18 that differ pretty greatly in weight. You know, nowadays I think your 18 reissue Giant Beats will come out, they'd probably be really close. Maybe a few grams difference, 50 grams probably at the most. But there were some that were thinner. I mean, were much heavier than others. And a 20 also. I think Bob has told me that all the 24s he's had have been really within a range. But definitely the 18s I know were different. Like the two I had were probably like 150, 200 grams apart, if I recall. And Bob has backed that up. But in any case, Reissue Giant Beat 24. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to get this from him. I may. Because it is a rare bird. It actually has rides stamped into it, which supposedly there's just a few that were. And I think, you know, somebody was selling these on, this is the one that was on eBay for a long time. So, what I'm going to do is I have to get up because these are, I don't want anything to happen to these. So I have to set them down gingerly. All right. So there is a Reissue Giant Beat. This is an original. This is an original Giant Beat. Right here. This is a 20. Okay? Remember the original's just a Giant Beat here. It was in a white writing, which you can barely see there now. The ink came off very easily in the originals. You can see that. See that old Western, like General Story sort of font. And this was, again, Bob's. Bob let me have this one for a good price because, again, I'd gotten rid of all my Giant Beats. You'll notice the bell on this one. Original Giant Beats had bigger bells. Now, the 24 is sort of a bad example to compare it to because the 24 is a bigger bell anyway. But if I had a Reissue Giant Beat here, and I posted some pictures on the web. If you go to Cymbalholic and type in original Giant Beat, you'll see pictures that I posted. The credit isn't given to me because I have them on another site. But those are pictures I took here at my house. You'll see how big this bell is. A Reissue Giant Beat has a smaller bell. More like a 2002. But this Giant Beat, you'll see, has a bigger bell. This is a 20. Even the 18s. The 18 bell isn't quite this big. But it's bigger than you'd see on a Reissue Giant Beat. And again, here is the stamp. You'll see at the 3, if this is noon on a clock, you know, 12, 3, 6, 9. You'll see the stamp. Paiste, made in Switzerland, trademark. And you see the moon and the rays. There's also a different version of this I've seen on Giant Beats, where I want to say, I think it's slightly different, where the moon and the rays are here, but I want to say Paiste, instead of being here under the moon and rays, might be here at the top. So it might be Paiste and the Made in Switzerland trademark. They did have 2 stamps. At least I've seen them. So you'll notice the patina. The original Giant Beats, as do the reissues, they have sort of a brownish, kind of almost greenish patina to them. I'm not sure how they did that. But the lathing is real fine on the Giant Beat. And on the, you know, it's almost like a, you know, on the Sound Edge hats, on the 602s anyway, because the 2002s doesn't apply, but the 602 Sound Edge hats have a very fine lathing like this. So you'll see that, the very fine lathing, as did some of the Paiste. They had a special 7-sound set, which had like hats and there was a china with it, or but anyway, a lot of those cymbals had this very fine lathing too, and I love this lathing. You know, for a long time you couldn't, you know, Paiste you couldn't find this lathing on cymbals till. You know, Paiste in the 80s came out with the reflector and the sound reflections, the 3000 reflector, the 2000 sound reflections. And then, of course, even there are 2002 reflectors that didn't say, the later versions, I think in the 90s stuff, actually they might have put reflector on it. But in the 80s, there were some 2002s, before they were sound reflections, that looked like a 3000 reflector and a 2000 sound reflections. Anyway, neither here nor there. So for a long time, sort of a poor man's Giant Beat, or a replacement substitute Giant Beat, was a 3000 reflector or 2000 sound reflections. But those were heavier cymbals. By the very, you know, they got into the 1980s where cymbals were beefed up. They weren't this thin. But those were good replacements. Anyway, but here it is. This is an original 20-inch Giant Beat. And you'll notice, you know, with the reissue Giant Beats, of course, they put Paiste on the bottom, and then they put the ink, you know, the size here. They might have put the size under the bell on the later ones. Paiste in their literature always says that they discontinued the Giant Beats in 1971 when they started the 2002s. But I know that's not true, because you can, in 71-ish, they changed the logo from that white at the 9 o'clock to the black, like you see on the reissues at the noon, but close to the bell. And you'll see sometimes those on eBay, and those usually have that doesn't have a serial number. that when there may be a couple white label ones with serial numbers, you know, right around the 1971 point. I don't know, I've never seen one. But they did switch to a black writing in and around 71. The only reason why I say is because the ones I've seen in person and on eBay, when I've seen them, thank God the pictures are usually pretty good. I've actually seen, I want to say that I have pictures here of a pair of 15-inch hats that have a serial number from 73. I think the first number on the 6-digit serial number is from 1973. So Paiste did still make them. I think they didn't maybe aggressively market them, or maybe they didn't distribute them here in the States. But I've seen, no matter what the folks at Paiste will tell you, I'm telling you, I've seen Giant Beats with the black label that have a serial number as late as 1973. I wish I had one here to show you, though. But they're great cymbals. It's terrific. They brought them back. I used to call Paiste all through the 90s and harangue them about the Giant Beats. And they didn't know. When I first called out there, they didn't know. The person on the phone, laughed. They're like a giant. I said this in another video. But God love them. They brought them back, and they are great cymbals. Again, my advice to them would be to maybe have a slightly heavier version. And then also, too, if they could maybe make a 22. A 22 would be really nice, a Giant Beat land. As would a Sound Edge pair of hats, I think. I know they want to keep it to the original, but remember the original Giant Beats didn't have 14-inch hats. You look at all the old stuff, it was just 15 hats, 18, 20, 24. Although they did make 14s, I know for sure, in 1971-72 land range, which you don't see in the catalogs here, but like I said, they did make Giant Beats up into 72, 73. They must have, according to the serial numbers. Because I did see one time on eBay, somebody was selling a pair of 14-inch original Giant Beats. They had the serial number in there, the embossed logo at the 3 o'clock. So they did originally sell 14s, but although until a little later apparently. But anyway, so if you want to see some footage there's a lot of footage you do see of bands playing Giant Beats, and nowhere is there a better example of somebody playing Giant Beats than in the Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii, or the Pompeii video. They went to Pompeii. They went to in Italy, and in this Pompeii, Italy, and they set up in this what do you call it? Like a little, like an amphitheater or a theater, a stadium, where they set up, and you've seen it probably. Well, if you can't, Live at Pompeii, you can find bits of it on YouTube. They set up all their gear, and it's nice and symmetrical, and one of the nicest opening shots. It's almost like a Stanley Kubrickian opening shot from way back, and then it slowly pans in on the band. I think they're playing echoes or whatever, and it's really cool. It's a little, it's really Pink Floyd-y. It's kind of pompous, but it's great. I love Pink Floyd. But anyway, Nick Mason, the drummer, has Giant Beats all around him. From what I see is he has an 18 on his left, an 18 on his right. A little further to his right, he has a 20, and much further on his right, he has a big 24. And you can really hear them. And you can really hear them for as they are, because they're not mic'd real. I don't see any, all I see are dynamic mics around the drums, because they're outside. So there's a lot of dust and dirt. I don't know if they, I don't know how they would have felt about putting ribbon mics, or, well, then again, they did use those Sennheiser, I think. I don't know, those are dynamic mics, I think. But anyway, but you can really hear those cymbals. If you want to see original Giant Beats in action, look around Nick Mason in the Pompeii, because he's surrounded by them. Although I do think the hats are 602s. They don't look to be Giant Beats to me. Anyway, and here's another quick bit of Paiste information. My friend Bob, God love him too. Originally Paiste had in 2002, late 2001, 2002, they had the anniversary 2002 release of Black Label 2002 cymbals to commemorate, the 2002 name in 2002 the year. They came out with Black Label 2002s. But no, those ones in 2002, the reissues were actually stenciled on the cymbal, like you'd see, here on this, not the old style actual inking. And I think that those cymbals, in my opinion, were just really 2002 versions of 2002s. Does that make sense? In the year 2002, they did the anniversary, the name 2002, although technically I guess at that point the cymbals would have been 31 years old, 1971, 2002. But those are essentially, those are heavier modern day 2002s, just with the black inking. But no, a lot of folks don't really remember this. In the early mid-90s, and I remember this because I had a modern drummer, Paiste, it was around the time that Ludwig, first brought back the Vista lights. Maybe it was a little before that, but Paiste had like a commemorative John Bonham set of cymbals. They had the 24-inch ride, an 18-inch ride, an 18-inch medium, think a 20-inch medium, and then a pair of 15-inch sound-edge hats. But those cymbals in the early mid-90s were made to the weights, the original weights of the 70s, 2002s, which of course, as I've always said, are thinner. And I finally found one, thanks to my friend Bob, God love you, bro. This is an early mid-90s reissue. This is not, it is a reissue, but it is not a from this decade, or the past decade, 2002 reissue. This is the one I've been talking about that a lot of folks know about, but not everybody. So this is, it looks, except for this, you'll see that the word medium is stenciled. This is like a modern, that's not an ink stamp, but it's, it's stenciled on there. Or it might be just a real, medium, of course, in a real black label wouldn't look this clean, it wouldn't be as big. But anyway, look at that. That is a 1970s stamping, so I don't know if they found the original stamp or if they recreated it. But you can see that's an inking. It's not real clear like, like this is. This is a stenciling like they do on their modern stuff. And also the 2002 cymbals from 9 years ago would all look like this. This would look like this. This would look like, I just showed you on the reissue, when it would say Made in Switzerland, too, in ink. But this is a 1990s reissue. So this is identical, as is this, as is the 18 here. Actually, the 18 might have been stenciled. I don't remember. But anyway, so this is, yeah, right here. Okay, you can see here, it says Swiss made in stenciled ink. So obviously you won't see that on an original 1970s. Otherwise, like if you pick this up, you think it was the 1970s. Of course, except for the medium, which is bigger and stenciled. So the serial number on this begins with, I think it's a 247, blah, blah, blah. And this is a nice cymbal. I mean, this is, again, 70s medium 18-inch weight that they reproduced in the early 90s. So, Bob, God love you. This is, in fact, a specimen that I've finally wanted to show people, because they're out there. Remember, the ones from the year 2002 will be stenciled, meaning that like a real clean, Paiste logo. I don't have any. I've actually owned one reissue, but anyway, like this, like the stencil. I don't know if you can see that. Like the real clean, modern day way of writing, not like the rubber stampy sort of like, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, so this is one of them. God bless Bob. Bob, you're the man. So, and the other Paiste stuff, I'll make more Paiste videos, but I don't have a lot of old Paiste stuff anymore. So I would like to have stuff I could actually show. So, in any case, I hope that's somewhat helpful in my arcane, useless Paiste knowledge. Thanks for watching.